Archeology, defined as the study of human society primarily through the recovery and analysis of the material, culture, and environmental data which they have left behind, which includes artifacts, architecture, biofacts, and cultural landscapes.
Digging up dinosaurs.
A study of, remains of civilizations and animals and all that stuff in the past.
I don't know what archaeology is.
What do I think archaeology is? Let's see, that's a pretty tough question. I'm pretty sure it's a bunch of guys digging up bones in the middle of nowhere because they enjoy it for some weird reason.
It is collecting artifacts.
Archaeology is the study of history based on artifacts, I guess. I don't know, that's how I think about it.
Archaeology, I think it's like studying the rocks, yes, right? Studying rocks and ancient stuff.
I think archaeology is the study of fossils.
I think archaeology is digging through dirt to find old bones and fossils and old stuff.
The study of bones and history through fossils.
Archaeology is trying to understand why we are the way we are. And I think that's the best way to put it. We're just trying to understand us.
Unfortunately, while some people know what archaeology is, many people have an incorrect idea of what archaeology is really about. Furthermore, when presented with the real definition of archaeology, many people find the subject less than interesting.
Its age, the site, and so on. Can you pin it right down this time?
Well, I could make a guess at that. If it's not from the site of Monte Alban, it is from a site of very similar provenience.
Does that sound boring to you?
Yes, it does.
Very boring.
Somewhat.
To me personally, a little bit boring. I do like history, but the history that's in the ground and that has to be dug up, and until someone actually digs it up and tells me something interesting, then I think it's kind of boring.
I think it is extremely boring.
Do you think that sounds boring?
No, I am interested in dinosaurs and the human past. So,
if you were to present, like I said earlier, what a normal dig is like, the average archaeology project, and what goes on, yawn city. I think it would be very dry to most people, which is why what is normally presented is the sexier, cooler stuff. I think that people think archaeology is very exciting. You ask anybody about it, even if they don't understand what archaeology is. So what is archaeology? And they say, oh, well, it's digging up bones, or it's whatever. They have all sorts of different views of what archaeology is. But they all are very excited about it because almost everyone's interested in old stuff. Like, where did this come from? What's the story behind it? What's it worth? Which they're always getting into that. But people are just interested in old stuff.
So the question is, what can we do to make archaeology more interesting while not detracting from its true nature?
try to recreate what happened on how the people or animals died, I guess. Pretty cool.
When you're only presenting the really sexiest, coolest finds, the big temples, the royal tombs, the gold that people do find every now and then, the shipwrecks that do have certain things, then people assume that that's mostly what we find. And when they actually do hear about what we normally do, it's pretty boring. Eyes kind of glaze over and they don't really care that you've spent the last year writing a proposal and getting turned down, and you finally get it, and then it's barely enough money, and you go down there and you excavate and you find a couple of projectile points, and that's all you find, and you come back and you write it all up and you publish it. You spend another 6 months doing that, and all you really did was maybe a month's worth of field work for 2 years worth of work, and all you found was a couple of projectile points. I don't think the public really thinks about that very much, and that's not what is presented in documentaries, because that's boring. I mean, it's not that it's exciting to find those finds for the archaeologists, but for the public, who would care about that? It's too dry and boring.
Maybe reenactments rather than a guy talking while there's maybe pictures or video footage of something, just reenactments or stuff like that.
I think that experimental archaeology is relatively exciting. There's been several documentaries that have been done about like people trying to figure out how they built Stonehenge, for instance, how the pyramids were built, like what types of contraptions and technology do they have at their disposal to be able to do this, how many people would it take to do something, and getting people to do that and actually getting to see it happen is fairly exciting to people, I think. But I think the reason that's exciting is because you're making it accessible to them. And so I think that one way to make it exciting for people, because obviously they like watching those types of shows. They like seeing 35 people try to build Stonehenge with nothing but ropes and logs, you know, and rolling these stones around. Time lapse of excavations, showing the process of maybe several days worth of excavating, maybe in a tight shot, maybe in a wide angle as well, of everyone moving around, dirt being moved, dirt being screened, things happening. I think that if you can bring archaeology to the present for people, in other words, using modern analogies.
I think human beings are just god awful at learning from history, even though it's there for them to enjoy. And I think it's important to understand why, you know, Mayan culture failed and why Egyptian culture failed, and you know what was wrong with Rome. Because frankly, I think that if history is any indication, we're not going to last as long as we think we are.
If you've got some very boring person presenting it, which is what happens a lot of times, you either have a very dry and boring person that's presenting this information, which no one wants to watch that. The public definitely doesn't. Or two, some actor that's not an archaeologist at all and doesn't understand any of it and is just playing one. Well, academics can see right through that, and even the public sometimes can say, well, this guy's not really, he doesn't have credentials. I don't believe what he's saying. So if you can have a combination of charismatic and heavy on credentials and make it exciting and current, then I think that that's a way to do it. It's a hard combination to find, but I think capitalizing on that, geez, you can make anything interesting if you've got credibility and charisma. I mean, anything.
I watch documentaries all the time. I like documentaries. I have no life.
Making movies would be pretty cool.
With all of these changes in mind, what does the public think? Would they watch a program?
Yeah, I mean, it's history. History is interesting.
If it would relate to me, probably.
If we changed our perception of what archaeology really is.
Yeah.